Well, I want to welcome everybody tonight. I'm really excited that you're here with us to talk to Francesca. I loved Ghosts of Harvard. It truly was a book that I started reading it at 11, and the next time I looked at the clock, Sam can attest to that because I was very tired when I came in the next morning. It was after 4 o'clock. I love those kind of books that I fall into, and I know that you come from a very strong literary family. Um, so I want to welcome you here to a great good place for books, and I'm so excited, and I hope one day we get to meet in person.
I would love that so much. Thank you so much for having me. I am just so humbled and honored to hear you say these kind words about this book that I just poured my heart and soul into and worked on for so long, not knowing if it would ever see a real honest to goodness shelf, much less a brilliant reader's hands like you and the community of your bookstore. So thank you so much.
Well, you know, I can say it's been one of my favorite hand sells. I mean, you can ask Samantha because I have a friend who jokes that I hit people over the head and make them buy books. This book was so easy for me to just say, it covers everything. It's got family drama, it's got a mystery, it's got espionage, it's got ghosts. I mean, there's not much it doesn't have. And the writing is absolutely spectacular.
Oh, well, thank you so much. I think it certainly has a little something for everyone, but you know, it's also, I know it's a little hard to categorize for that reason too, that it's not the obvious, oh, it's just this one genre, or it's Gone Girl meets X, or whatever the way we talk about and describe books. But that is why amazing independent bookstores like yours are so vital and vitally important, because I'm so grateful both as an author and a reader, because it's that human connection where, you know, human to human, we understand that we don't live in search keywords and we don't feel in, you know, topic headings or genre categorizations. That's marketing. You know, human and heartfelt stories, and that's really what I feel that at bottom this is, you know, a family story and just something I hope rings true to the heart, even though I go in some fantastical directions, but that couldn't be communicated if not for dedicated, thoughtful, personal booksellers like we have in you two. So thank you so much.
Definitely.
Well,
I mean, I think you mentioned it earlier, but I would love to hear what was your inspiration, because as I was reading it, I was like, maybe she heard a story about this character. I don't know. There were just so many entry points. So I would love to hear what was.
You know, I read very widely and I don't stick to one genre. So I wanted to write a book I hadn't read yet and just let my heart go in all the directions and interests, the myriad interests that I have. But what really started it is actually a bit of a sad inspiration story. I went to Harvard myself as an undergrad, and when I was there as a junior, a young man in my dorm died by suicide. And he wasn't a close friend, but he was somebody who I was used to seeing in the dining hall and giving a little nod to, and someone I never would have thought was suffering. And that really is the cruelty of mental illness, is that it's invisible. Somebody can be struggling with something that could have, you know, fatal consequence, and you can't see, especially in these contexts of college and high achievers, kids who are used to, you know, keeping everything in line, and we just didn't know that he needed help. And so I felt that we were all shocked and saddened, but you know, it's such a complicated grief and a complicated loss, and you're so afraid of saying the wrong thing, you say nothing. And I don't even think we did a very good job comforting one another about it. We just sort of bottled it away. And then the following year, I was a senior, and around the same time of year, I remember reading an article in the Harvard Crimson that young man's little sister, who now was only a high school senior, had learned to play guitar in that year interim. And because he was a musician, she came to Harvard's campus and played a tribute to him on the anniversary of his passing. And I remember reading that and being knocked back on my futon and thinking, wow, I mean, the courage that it would take to come back to the campus where it happened, and just even a college campus when you're a high school senior, and to perform. And it was so clear that was this labor of love. I've tried to learn to play guitar. I tore up my fingers. It's very, you know, tough. But also, I realized that, you know, for acquaintances, you can compartmentalize, for better or for worse, probably for worse. But for a family, a tragedy like this does not happen to just one member. It happens to the entire family unit. That family of four is always a family of four with an empty chair now. And I was really struck by that year for her, and the way those types of pains for which the only way to cope is to go through it, to lean into it, to get even closer when you need all those answers. And I'm going to be really clear that the book is not in any way based on any real family. But I could not get that girl's courage and love and story out of my mind. And I just couldn't get that story out of my mind. So that was what inspired me to tell this story of loss from the sister's perspective, to show the way that an entire family grapples with something like this. And yeah, and then I really, like I said, you know, sort of let my imagination heighten it. I think whenever we experience an untimely, sudden death, which I feel a little emotional about because I actually experienced I lost a family member this week, but last week. But
sorry.
Thank you. You create an alternate reality springs up in your mind of what if that hadn't happened? What if they were still here? What if I had done something differently, or said you create a split reality. And so I thought, well, what if you could literally try to create an alternate reality, or the way that, you know, we talk about time as minute to minute, linear, staying in the present, but none of us live like that. We carry the past with us, the baggage of the past. We have the weight of the expectations of the future. You certainly feel that on a college campus, certainly one as obsessed with its own history as Harvard's. And so I thought about the way that the time closes in on you, and this duality of potential, and all of that swirling, but hopefully never losing sight of that family bonds.
Well, you know, another thing that I liked is I loved the flashbacks where you showed that how incredible their relationship was, and how they kind of lived in their own universe, Eric and Cady.
Right.
The way that they always had each other's back, and I don't know, I felt one of the reasons she went to Harvard was out of guilt, because she felt that she wasn't there for him.
Mm-hmm. I think absolutely. I think, you know, that we never have clear reasons, that we always have many, many reasons. You know, there's sort of this multiplicity of consequence and multiplicity of causes in this novel. And I really think for Cady, she's so driven by guilt in the beginning. She's also just, her identity is so relational to her brother. You know, she was always Eric Archer's little sister. And I think a lot of us can relate, even if none of the family contours, you know, match the one in this book. Families have their own mythology. They have their own roles that get assigned. You know, oh, the baby, he's the funny, spoiled one. He's the littlest, he's the baby. Oh, the eldest, right? You know, I'm an only child, but I have step siblings. So I've gotten a lot of, you know, different kaleidoscope looks on family and things like dynamics. And believe me, I still had, oh, I'm this stepsister, she's that stepsister. And I think sometimes in the best case scenario, that is like a helpful scaffolding for which you can build your own identity and launch into your future. And other times they are, you know, confining structures of our own making, and it can be very hard to break through. And, you know, growing up, Cady was, I think it was interesting for me to explore not a sibling rivalry, but somebody who is comfortable being the second banana and comfortable letting her brother be the spotlight. That is its own cover and shade, and she grew up in it and flourished in it and enjoyed it. But growing up, her entire life's question was, could I ever be as good as my brother if I really tried? And then when he gets sick, and this entire hero identity is then really warped, when his identity changes, so does hers. Then the new question is, could I ever be as sick as my brother? And that's a much tougher legacy to hitch your identity to, right?
Well, you know, one of the scenes that really struck me was when they go to the mall to get her mother's gift.
Right.
And Eric has an episode.
Right. Paranoid episode, yeah.
At first, she's like horribly embarrassed, and then she's trying to figure out how could this person who was her hero become so, in a way, pathetic. And have everybody laughing at him when he was always kind of like, he was the overachiever, and she was always kind of just running around in his shadow. And here she had to reach out and take care of him in that instance.
Right. I think it's really challenging when you have a loved one with mental illness, and it's very hard as a family member. Ironically, it is almost the hardest for the most intimate partners to see the symptoms as symptoms, because you're just so used to being able to connect to your brother like that and be like, yo, what are you doing? How can you think this? How can you don't want to be impatient. I think she looks back on her behavior with such a harsh lens. I don't see, I think we do that when the outcome is something we deeply regret. You look back, this book, I hope, challenges the saying that hindsight is 20/20. I'm not so sure hindsight is always 20/20. You do have the perspective of time. That's worth something, but it's not everything. Because when you feel as terrible about what happened as she does when she loses her brother, she looks back on all her actions and sees only the mistakes and only the harshness and only the, weak frailty of just being a sister. But you're right, she really struggles to adapt to more of a caretaker role with him. Even as I think she almost overplays it, like, it's those moments where because you're so protective of somebody who you love when they're doing something weird, you're extra agitated when they start acting strange. She doesn't want him to act strange, not because it's embarrassing her, but because she knows it would embarrass him. She doesn't want him to be outed either. She doesn't want his vulnerabilities all on display. And she certainly doesn't want to get, in that scene, her brother is grappling with this paranoid schizophrenic episode where he's obsessed with surveillance and believes that he's being surveilled by some passersby, and gets into an verbal altercation with some teens, and a mall cop comes over. And she thinks she's protecting her brother by taking the easy way out and just being like, you know what, he's disabled, please leave us alone, just to get rid of the mall cop. She doesn't realize how crushing that is, or she realizes the second too late. Honestly, I think she realizes the second it's out of her mouth, but how crushing it is for this brother who himself is so used to being so incredibly capable and not used to asking for help and not used to admitting to needing help. He's not ready to term it like that. It's not quite that. It isn't quite not that. But, those tough times, it's hard to love somebody. I take it back. It's not hard to love somebody who's going through that, but it's hard to love them the way that they need it, the way that they perceive that they need it, grappling with all of those issues that we deal with family.
Yeah. I have to be honest, I really struggled with how much she blamed herself. That was very hard for me to hang in there, because I just was like, oh my God, you were a child, like you were really young, and it's hard for adults to be there in this completely unconditional loving way. And so I was relieved that it resolved, the way that it did at the end, where she forgave her, really forgave herself. But I also thought too, like, I think you're right. I think that's a very common response to a tragic loss, that you can't control. We realize how little control we actually do have. And so then you scramble double time to be like, well, so I almost wonder if it's like her telling herself she could have done something is a way to retell it. Like then she gets a false sense of control. Like if only she had done the right thing. It's not that nothing could have been done. It's that she just failed doing the right thing, that somehow it could have had a different outcome. And it's painful, because you don't get all the answers. So,
well, another thing that I
lost control.
Another thing I wanted to say is, do you think that your own family history had a reason why you had to put a mystery string through it, since you tell everybody who your mom is?
My mom is Lisa Scottolini. She's a number one best-selling author of many, many wonderful thrillers and legal thrillers. And so certainly, keeping the pages turning is a matter of family pride. I have to keep that up. And so pacing was so important to me, even though I really did think I was writing an emotional family drama, even a coming of age story in a way. And I love literary fiction. For me, I don't want to waste a second of your time. I want to have, when you are distracted by a pretty description, there is some little plot trick that is already in the works. So I really hoped to deliver, for people who love twists, and I love twists. I love to try to guess them. I wanted to build some great ones in there that if you go back, you can go, oh, I should have guessed it, but I didn't.
There was one that I can say that I'm not going to mention who it is, but it's a very famous scientist. I did not know who that. I did not know until you dropped that on me who it was. And I knew it was somebody, but I didn't know exactly. And I'm not going to spoil it for anybody, but I can say that it is one of the ghosts, and it really blew me out of the water when I found out who he was.
Oh, that makes me so happy. Yes, one of the ghosts is a famous person, and it's fun to try and guess which one. But yeah, I think, and to me, that's having all those plates in the air, although it was a very complicated Scrivener document to keep it all straight when I was writing it. To me, that's what life is like too, right? I mean, gosh, it never relents. You might be having a family crisis, but there's also this going on at your work, and we're also in the middle of a pandemic. And also, it's like there just is always a lot happening in our real lives, and I think that that should be that way for the characters. And I also wanted to have a mystery at the heart of this book, because I knew that, without spoiling anything, that the ending doesn't give easy answers on some of the book's biggest questions. I didn't want to fall into, even though I play with your reader's expectations with evoking certain tropes, I didn't want to fall into the expected endings that sometimes soften the blows of real life. But I do think that even when we don't get exactly what we think we want, there is other unfinished business and other things to resolve. That is a lesson that's always been true so many times in my own life, when I think, oh, I will be happy when X happens. X might not happen, but if you're trying to pay attention and be open to learning, there are many other puzzles to solve that you might not have known about before.
I can say that one of my favorite scenes was the intimate scene. You threw a loop in there.
I did.
And that's all I'm going to say, because everybody's going to want to read that loop. Because,
I think I can say as a little hint, this book, is the dog barking bothering you? I'm really sorry about the dog.
Great Good Place for Books is a very dog-friendly bookstore.
There you go. Okay.
A wonderful store dog named Hazel who.
Oh, well, there you go. I'm literally going to text somebody to get the dog. I will say, at the start, this main character, Cady, grieving the loss of her brother, is really lonely and isolated. And I think, I love ghosts, but I'm also a skeptic. I think the book will satisfy either reader. If you want to believe that it's just scientific phenomena that people are telling themselves has a magical explanation, then that's the case. You can enjoy this book that way. You can also enjoy this book if you are like a hardcore ghost hunter. Mm-hmm. But I think there is an argument for this, that she's so lonely at the beginning of the book that she kind of creates or finds somebody who really evokes her, the friendship and rapport she had with her brother. A love interest, a little bit of a crush. What college girl doesn't need that? And a friend who's a girl who's in more trouble than she is. Mm-hmm. And those three things, those three voices that she's hearing, even though at first she's rightly afraid and rightly thinks, oh my gosh, am I losing my mind like my brother? Those are so tempting. She needs all three of those. She needs that big brother comfort. She needs that female friend who's looking out for her and who she hopes to look out for in return. And she can't resist falling for this voice, and the temptation and those relationship stability that those offer really lead her into this world of an alternate dimension, which kind of constantly is pulling her from the reality of it. So yes, if you can believe it, there is a ghost love interest, while there's also a live one, and she's trying to choose, and there's a moment where, why choose?
The live one's a little smarmy.
Well, you know what I think?
As as you move into the, I don't want to spoil it for anybody who hasn't read it, because I'm hoping that everybody buys the book. But it has a hell of a twist in that too.
Right. There are some twists, and some people, yeah. And I'll just say, yeah, we won't give anything away, but you know what? You got, this girl is struggling to keep her eye on where it matters. And I think any reader, trust me, you're not guessing the twist and ruining it if you are a little worried for her sometimes about times she's not worried, or you think she's overlooking some red flags. She is. And haven't we all, right? Haven't we all talked ourselves out of some inner warnings? But you know, what this is, this book is also, I think, really about trusting yourself, even when you can't explain things. I mean, you can't, you know, she can't explain certain misgivings she's having about various people in this novel. And because she's so worried about being paranoid, like her brother, or so worried about being crazy. How many times as women are we told that we're crazy? Or are we telling ourselves that we're crazy? I do that, where I'm like, I don't like him, but he's really nice, and he is, you know, he's very accomplished, and my friend recommended him, so I should like him. And I'm talking myself out of it, and then, you know, he gets fresh, and I'm like, you know what? I knew he was a creep. I knew that, but I convinced myself that I was being nutty. And she's sort of so, again, I think that's really an issue of identity. This young woman is just, she thinks she doesn't know herself yet. She actually does know herself. She just doesn't trust herself yet.
Okay, we have a question from one of
good.
our,
I'm going to go get my readers because I realized I couldn't see them. I'll be right back.
we have a question from one of our audience members. She wanted to know, Genevieve wanted to know, are there really professors at Harvard that are as mean to their students as the freshman seminar professor?
I'm sorry to say that professor is based on a real professor. Yes, they are. They are that mean. They are drunk on power. Yeah, I had somebody commented like, oh, in this day and age, with the way that students complain and, you know, like HR run amok or political correctness run amok, this would never,
Would never happen.
would never talk to a student like that. I was like, if you think that Harvard professors are not so deeply full of themselves that they can't talk down to a freshman, unfortunately, I have bad news for you. I fictionalize everybody. I'm teasing a little bit about basing it on somebody, but I will say that I had a professor who made me feel just as queasy, just as smarmy, who was incredibly, incredibly charming in a big lecture course that I took. And I was like, oh, I adore him. I'm going to take can I make everybody laugh, young professor. Then I took this seminar with him, and he would write in the margins of our essays, like, curse us out. He'd go, why do you do this when you know I effing hate it? And it was about using is as a verb. So yeah, he was scary. And yeah, so I had to have a little fun with it. And of course, the vast majority were brilliant, warm, welcoming, generous intellectuals who I am so lucky and grateful to have gotten to spend any time with. And they're also represented, but yep, there are some duds.
Well, I think we all have one professor that kind of stands out, and whether it stands out for the reason that they kind of rock your world, or else they make, I mean, I can think of one in particular. He used to make me rewrite papers constantly. So finally one day I went up to him and I said, why are you making me rewrite this again? And he said, if I didn't think you could do better, I wouldn't ask you to rewrite it.
And I do love a tough nut to crack. Like, I am that codependent type who the harder you are to get to, like, I really want to please you. It's a great trait. It's also why I'm single, but
I get you, babe.
But there are certain people who are attracted by roles of power to be little petty tyrants. And I don't know, I hope he got whatever he wanted out of it. He no longer teaches at Harvard.
Well, and so, I wanted to, staying on the topic of kind of college life, campus life, the culture of Harvard specifically, in these very competitive universities, and the pressures and the stress, right? Because some of what Cady suspects, and there's a truth, but maybe not quite what she thought, but like, was some of it the pressure that he was under as he's going for this, you know, goal that he has, this personal goal, and that question about sort of the mental health of, you know, college students. We're reading more and more about it, and you know, that there are, it does feel like it's more heightened than it did way back when I was in college. Not that there were no stresses, of course there were, but I wondered for you, like, did you kind of think about that, like your Harvard experience and thinking about kind of what we're hearing about college in general, like such that pressure cooker piece of it?
Yeah, I do think that that's a real problem. I don't think it's so simple as like, oh, colleges just aren't doing enough. I think it's intractable for a couple different reasons. I certainly felt it when I was a student, which was a long time ago at this point, but it was, I remember feeling there was a culture of suffering, and where it was like a contest of suffering, like, oh, you stayed up till 3 a.m. to write a paper, I stayed up. Sort of this like, I'm not asking for help, I'm toughing it out, I eat glass, you know what I mean? This kind of like attitude, like I'm actually thriving for how hard this is my third triple macchiato, whatever. Like, now you could opt out, I did, as an English major where there are no wrong answers. So it wasn't like it only had to be that way. But if you had any kind of anxiety issues or you know, tendencies where that environment was really not necessarily very nurturing. And again, I also think, you know, especially in this mode we're in now with the internet and the way photos and you can make, there's such a feeling when you're at that age that every decision is so consequential. That every decision you're making during this time is going to just define the course of your life. Part of that is just the natural naivete of youth, that you feel like you're 21, you know everything there is to know. Like I look back and, you know, I thought I was going to marry the guy I was dating when I was 21. I was sure of it. That was I'm a big grown-up girl. I was like nuts. What was I talking about? There's that, but there's also the feeling of, you know, now we get those messages with the internet. Everything you put online is going to live forever. Your Facebook is going to live forever. Your Instagram, your this, you know, that English grade is going to determine your law school thing, which is going to determine who you meet and marry. Like, if you imbibe that Kool-Aid, like you can feel like, oh my God, I am so afraid of making the wrong move. And I think that to me is something that breaks my heart, even just as a 30-something looking back, because that really is so untrue. We do get second chances. We do get time to stumble and to rebuild and to reevaluate. No mistake is permanent. And I wish that we could teach kids to make good choices, to be careful, to recognize that there are consequences to actions without frightening them at the very moment that you want them to be most free to explore and to branch out and to just give things a shot.
Yeah.
Well, Francesca, we have a couple questions here. Can I pop in with one from Eileen from Chester? She's the private detective from Chester County.
Oh, great, yeah.
And here's what she writes. I met you last fall at your mom's house and ordered your book then. I loved it. So 2 things. Actually she has 3 things.
I love it.
What led you to want to use ghosts, let alone the ones you chose? B, are there actually places, tunnels at Harvard where people have heard voices? And C, I wrote you to say I lost my baby brother to suicide and had ungodly guilt for years. Your book literally released me from that. And I'll thank you for the rest of my life.
Oh my God. Eileen, thank you so much for that comment. I remember reading that and just being incredibly moved. That's all I have. Like, I don't need any review or any other thing. Nothing would mean more to me than you sharing that with me. So thank you so much. It was so incredibly important for me. The most important thing of this entire book was to make sure that people who have gone through this experience, which is so common, even if it isn't talked about nearly enough, feel heard and empathized with and respected by this story. I did a lot of research for this book. I'll tell you, I didn't interview a single person who is a suicide survivor, which is indeed the term for someone who's lost someone to suicide, which I think is interesting and apt, that even the loved ones are called the suicide survivors. That's not the term for somebody who attempts suicide but survives. I think it's apt because it is an incredibly, incredibly intimate and affecting loss. but it is not what, you know, I wanted this to reflect the reality of the guilt that survivors go through, but also the reality that it is not your fault and it was not in your control. And so God bless you, that means so much to me. Let me circle back to your questions. What made me want to use ghosts? Like I said, I love them. I love that idea. And in thinking, I really, like I said, I'm a skeptic, but I want it to be true. And the intersection of that, to me, is found in theoretical science. There is nothing in theoretical physics that you can think of, or that a science fiction author can think of, or a horror fiction author can think of, that somewhere a quantum physicist has not already taken very seriously. This is some wild, out there, Big Bang type, you know, heaven, God particle stuff. That is real science, real in the sense that it's taken seriously, theoretical. But, and I was really, really inspired by these two books by Lisa Randall, who's an incredible astrophysicist. One is called Warped Passages, which is indeed about alternate dimensions and the evidence of them in our perceptible dimensions. And that's where a lot of that speech from Professor Michaela Prokop was informed by. That's real. You know, it is widely, it's accepted science that there are many, many more dimensions than we can perceive. Ones in which time and space-time is compactified and folded over and reversed. And I just thought, like, how wild is that? And, you know, it's true that in the universe that the vast majority of the matter is dark matter, meaning matter we have indirect evidence of, but for which we cannot perceive ourselves. Like, that's just extraordinary and true. And I just thought it had this enormous emotional resonance for me about what happens to, as just sort of a modern, updated haunted house. You know, I think we feel, it was like, so there's this real science side, and then there was this experiential ring of truth for me, which is that I've only really felt like ghosts when I have gone into like architectural spaces, a childhood home, maybe my old elementary school. And it's like you can almost hear the voices of your younger selves knocking around on those walls. You know, you can be transported, especially orally, especially with sounds. You know, I can still hear my grandmother's voice. I can still think, you know, we can just revisit, we create those alternate realities. And like I said, really about the loss of somebody, that we instantly create a parallel dimension where they're still here. What if they were still here now? What if they were still here at this Christmas? What if they were still here when my first child is born? We create that in our minds, and then there's this evidence for it. So I wanted to explore that with ghosts. And then why I know I answered too long. I'll answer quickly. Why I chose the ones I did was I really wanted to explore this idea of potential and all its forms and all its implications. You know, the loss, to me, I felt that the ultimate wrench of losing a young person to suicide is that you feel that terrible loss of potential. What would they have been? And that the idea that it's an unnatural death, they didn't get to live what they were entitled to from the fates or from God or from, you know, whatever you think it is. There's that feeling, but really, like, we put that on them as outsiders. And for somebody like Eric, we put it a super positive potential that deserves protection, that is a shame to lose, blah, blah, blah. Then I wanted to think about, well, what are other, you know, whose potential do we not protect? Whose potential do we value less in society, and why? That led me to start to think about racism in our culture and in our history, and you know, entire peoples, like Black people in America, especially in the founding of this nation, whose potential we did not value. And, you know, so I thought of that. And I also thought of wartime as a time where, like, immense potential is just lost because you have the young people going to war and being lost. So I wanted to think about these times where potential was thwarted, subverted, you know, positive potential was then used against somebody or used in a way we didn't expect. But the example of racism, the example of one of the ghosts, for those who haven't read it, is an enslaved woman at the Harvard president's residence. And, you know, I'll tell you, I had written an entire version of this book and sold it to Random House and already done edits on one which did not have that character in that form. I always wanted to, because I was interested in those themes, it was always a young Black woman. It was always a young Black mother, although in the initial version it was a different woman was pregnant. But I had this totally different history because that history of slavery at Harvard was totally unknown. It was lost to time. It wasn't actively suppressed, but because such poor records were kept, it was not really outed or made public until 2016. And I had this entire other character, like I said, with similar themes, who was like from the 1880s when Harvard had sort of like indentured servants there as maids. Very interesting history, coincided with the Reconstruction era. It was all very cool. But then I realized if there is a real history of an enslaved person at this campus, and I'm talking about even an exploited worker, I am doing a whitewashing of just the truth. And I realized I had written this entire book about how we don't know what we don't know. And we think we're putting together all the pieces, but we don't know what voices are missing. And then here I had this living example while writing it, where I didn't know that I was missing, that history was missing. So when I did, I said to my editor, I knew it was going to delay us. And I said, I feel like I have to rewrite this character. I feel in my heart like this character was always supposed to be there. And give me a minute to research, because this character is from 1750 to 60. So 100 years earlier, it wasn't an easy swap, but it was like kismet made to be, it fit right in. And I'm so glad that I did that, because it embodied the point that I wanted to make about all these things about the potential loss, not only to the individual, but to all of us.
Well, you know, one of the things that I can say that I kept wondering what happened to her son.
I know. We don't know that. You know, I had to.
I mean, that was what kept going through my mind.
Right. Even though that character was based on a real person named Bilha. All we know about her is that she had a baby boy 4 years before her death. Without spoiling, it's not really a spoiler. You have to know why. Anyway, but we don't know anything else. We don't know her cause of death. We don't. So I certainly did fictionalize that. That's why I'm not spoiling anything, guys. Don't worry. But I had to fictionalize an entire story around it. And I really, really grappled actually with using that real woman's name because I had to fictionalize so much. I really questioned, like, am I just reappropriating the story, this person's story? But I really felt that because her name had been suppressed and lost to time for so long, that to hide it again,
would have been a disservice.
It just would have been, you know, she lived and she died there and had all the rich iron, the terrible, not rich good, rich bad. I mean, heavy, weighty irony that have your child born in the home of the Harvard president's residence and have the least potential and opportunity afforded to you and your family that could be imaginable.
Well,
and
in my head, I had it that I had him as the father of the child.
Yeah, I can't speak to that. He was very elderly, but that said, there were, I read accounts of frequent abuse there were 4 enslaved people over a period of time, 2 of which were women. From what I read, abuse was frequent. So I don't think it would have to be, you didn't have to suffer at the hands of the Harvard president himself to suffer. And you don't have to, and you know, a big revelation that shouldn't be one, but certainly is, you know, I went to school in Pennsylvania and we learned that slavery was a problem with the South. And that, you know, we were all just abolitionists trying to help everybody out here. Yeah, that's not the case. This country sadly was, you know, founded on an economy fueled by the plantations, but certainly the northern states, even New England, even, you know, when they were colonies, were, and the entire system of American upper education and school, and the most progressive thought, you know, progressive for the time, but the revolutionary thought that led to the Revolutionary War and, you know, the writing these incredible ideals that we struggle to live up to this day, even those are written with those human blind spots for people who don't know what they don't know. They can't see what they can't see. It isn't about indicting Harvard. It isn't about foisting, you know, current understanding. It's the ignorance of the time, but it distills the truth, you know. And I just think that we need all of the voices. Like, yes, these were incredible thinkers, and yes, they had terrible blind spots, and they accepted terrible cruelty as part of their everyday life. Those two things mattered. I just tried to imagine one version of this person's life, but I think we would be better served to imagine many, many versions that we'll never know. You know, that was why I wanted to use her real name, because if I said, well, unless I know all the details, I can't really reference her. Well, then we will never reference her again, and we'll be able to blind ourselves. Let's not blind ourselves anymore, and let's just try to imagine and empathize with the experiences we have not had as best we can.
So we have another question from Laurel, and it's Harvard felt like a character in the book. Was there a lot you learned about Harvard yourself in researching the book?
Absolutely. I was just like an oblivious student for most of the, but I will say that Harvard is a character the moment you set foot on campus. That was true. I was profoundly intimidated. I went to, I'm home for whatever family reasons. So I'm in Pennsylvania right now in the house I grew up in. And, you know, I went to a regular public school. I was stunned that I got in. I thought I was the admissions mistake, which a lot of people think. And at some degree, it is just luck. I mean, for the acceptance rate being as low as it is, there are 1,000 more, you know, equally qualified kids that you got in, and that is a weighty thing of like, oh, do you like poetry? Are you the next T.S. Eliot? Because he went here. Or even more modern, you don't have to go too far back. Oh, are you like computer science? Are you the next Mark Zuckerberg? Where's Facebook? You know, that is this enormous pressure, and every building, which is so picture perfect and beautiful on Harvard's campus, is a living memorial. That did strike me when I was there. You know, the Widener Library, I grew up loving Titanic. I was in Titanic the musical. Widener Library, from Harry Widener, who sank with the Titanic. You know, there truly is a colonial cemetery across the street from the freshman dorm yards. I didn't fictionalize a single monument, a single plaque, even the, you know, little hope we earned your tip, earn morbid joke in the Tea Lux was really there until sadly Tea Lux closed this year. But yeah, so you know, none of that's fictionalized. I don't have any, back to Eileen's question, I don't have any stories of actually hearing voices, but believe me, the place is haunted. I mean, anybody who's been at the library stacks late at night, and that's true too. The lights are out in the stacks until you walk through them, and then they come light up like, you know, like Frankenstein's corpse revivifying right in front of you with these old crackly sounds. It is true that there are midnight rehearsals for the organ, the church organ at Memorial Church. That was the moment I knew I had a book. We know there's some, I think every writer, and I think everybody, even if you haven't had your book published, you should, if you're writing, you are a writer. But you have that moment where you're like, is this idea real? Could I actually make this into a whole book? And then you stumble onto something and you're like, okay, from now on, I'm gonna follow through. And for me, I knew I love music. I love the intersection. The music makes me feel the most spiritual. So I knew I wanted to have music in this book. And I had a friend who was the church organist for the choir and whatever. So I had lunch with him after college. This is about, you know, doing research. I didn't know this when I was a student, and I was talking like, you know, when would you rehearse? Because I never remember, you know, during the day the church was open. I never remember hearing me. And he was like, oh yeah, we would rehearse at night because we were all so busy. My rehearsal hour was 11:45 at night until, and I was like, and he was like, yeah, and we leave the lights off because we don't want to, you know, I was like, I never saw the lights on. He was like, oh yeah, we leave them off while we rehearse. And I just thought like, you mean to tell me that you sit in a dark church and play the organ in the dark at midnight? And then I was like, my haunted Harvard book is real. Like, it was like, oh, I was so happy and excited. And I was like, boom, I'm going. I acknowledged him, Alvin Huff, and now he's like a musical director on Broadway. But yeah, it was so cool and all that spooky stuff. But the Whispering Wall I had to research, that about the organ, the observatory I had to do, and that all the catalogs of the astronomical plates in the book, which is a fun scene. all that I had never experienced as a student. So I learned, now I could give tours. Now I know so much about it.
Well,
but,
what I want to put out there, does anybody else have a question for Francesca about the book or about the writing process? Oh, Francesca for president 2020.
2020.
no, I just do the heart stuff. I can't figure out these big old problems that we got here. But
Lord.
I can make us feel connected to each other through books and through stories and be a little kinder to ourselves, then that's my highest calling. That's my greatest wish. But yeah, the research was fun. I mean, it's so fun as a fiction author that you get to just research whatever interests you. And I got to sort of ferret out so many things that have always just, piqued my curiosity, and hope that if it piqued mine, that it would pique yours. And there were certainly moments where I was like, gosh, this book's got a lot going on in it that I'm just all gonna pull all my reins in, I'll keep all the 4 horses in line. But with a lot of editing and a brilliant partner and editor at named Kara Caesar at Random House, then I hope I pulled it off. But yeah.
No question you did. Absolutely.
Thank you so much.
Let's see, we've got from Sarah Smebby. I love what you said in an earlier interview about keeping the day-to-day writing as blue collar. That helped me just get to it instead of waiting to be inspired. Thank you.
Oh, I'm so glad. Yes, that is like something I say often. I need to say to myself often. I got that from my wonderful, actually, Harvard writing advisor, whose name is Brett Anthony Johnston. He kindly gave me a blurb, and he wrote a beautiful book called Remember Me Like This. But, that's so key. And it was so key when he said it. And I'm glad that you received, I hope I was like, oh, I don't mean to sound like, I don't mean that in any condescending way. I mean, blue collar, and like, it's honest work. It is honest work that you just need to show up for and punch your time card. And kind of on those days when it's not great, you kind of just got to wait it out. You can't check out. It doesn't mean that you succeed at that 100%. I don't. There are some times, like, where Twitter calls my name and I have to read strangers' thoughts for some reason, because it's easier than trying to think about my thoughts about my book. But pull back. It's like meditation. Your mind's going to wander. Pull back, refocus on the book. You're on the boss's time. You got to, keep doing it. And that work ethic is something I learned from him, and also something I really watched with my mom. I mean, she put it into practice. I always say that I was so lucky to be born, not to a best-selling author, but to a beginning one, because I really watched her build her career brick by brick. She changed careers to spend more time with me, she says very sweetly. But I mean, I got to see that, and I was probably too little to really understand the enormous risk she was taking. I was like 6, 7, 8, 9. But what I do remember is that she worked very hard after her normal work hours, writing on the computer, big boxy computer. And she wrote an entire first novel that never got published. Whole thing she'd worked on for 5 years and sent it to 100 agents, and it didn't go anywhere with it. But one agent wrote her back and said, you got a background in law, maybe you should try this new hot genre, legal thrillers, have at it. And then that next book was Everywhere That Mary Went, and that's where she built her career.
See if that works for you.
Right? Give shot. But the amazing thing about this, I didn't know that about the agent when I was little. I've heard her tell that story since. But with them, I think the most important part is I don't remember that period of that rejection as even a big moment of turmoil in our lives. I don't remember it as a big period of devastation or a big thing where, like, oh my God, mommy's heartbroken. That isn't to say that rejections aren't heartbreaking, but it taught me that, failure is an event, not a definition. These struggles are just part of it. That has just been so born out. I mean, I was working on this novel for 10 years and just not knowing, like, we are so taught from a very early age that if you're good at something, it should come easily and you should succeed quickly at it. And we are obsessed with prodigies and, American Idol stories of you're an unknown and now you're a superstar. And writing just doesn't follow that trajectory, even for the greatest people, even for the people whose career seems like that. Trust, but they were toiling long before you knew their name. And I'm reminding that to myself right now because I'm working on the second book right now. And sometimes it's first draft is hard going, but I'm sticking with it. And I'm so glad, Sarah, that you're sticking with your project too.
Yeah. So are you able to tell us anything about the new book, or is it too soon?
It feels a little too soon. It's my little fragile candle. I'll just say it's not a sequel, but I feel like if you enjoy the genre bending and that kind of, if you enjoyed Ghost of Harvard, I do think you would enjoy this one. And I think if Ghost of Harvard really explored grief and the things grief does to our psyche and our perception of time in our world and identity, I think the next book is really about, is more actually about even love, attraction, trusting our, and trusting our gut, whether it comes to the good things like attraction or things like fear, and being in touch with our bodies. And if this book was all about sound and hearing, I think the next book is a lot about scent and even perfume, but just those, that limbic brain, that part of our mind that we can't always articulate, but which goes straight to our emotionality, straight to our memories, straight to our fear, lust, all those things. So it's a good, I think it's gonna be juicy and fun.
Yeah.
So, on that note, do you want to let us know maybe 3 titles that you'd recommend for, we've been calling it your COVID reads?
Yes, my COVID reads. So first, right off the top, Kevin Kwan's Sex and Vanity. I was obsessed with the Crazy Rich Asians trilogy. I loved it. I listened to them on audiobook. I love to listen to the languages and the foods and everything. But this was so great. None of us got a great vacation this summer because we were all quarantined. My toes did not touch sand. But if you want to go to like the beautiful Amalfi Coast and eat ridiculously expensive food, like this book just makes my mouth water. Like it was the summer vacation of a crazy rich person that I did not get to take and probably would never get to take even in a non-quarantine scenario. So I just loved this. It was just escapist and fun. And he always just has such a unique voice and perspective. And it was like, take me out of this reality and take me into this book. I just drank it in one gulp. I loved it. I also read Early. This is one of my first quarantine reads. Such a Fun Age by Kylie Reed. I'm a Philly girl. She is too. I love reading that. That's why I picked it up. But then I loved it. I think it was, this book deals with so many of it touches on a lot of the issues that we're obviously, experiencing this summer with race and what does it mean to be an ally? What does it mean to be somewhat of a false ally? But you know what? It does it in such a true, authentic, just naturalistic way. This book is not forced. It felt so real. It just let all the gray area be there, that no easy answers, no people speechifying, and I think that is really how life feels. And that's why so many of these problems like microaggressions are real, but are also really hard to talk about. But they're easier to just know. Again, it's like, it's hard to explain, but you just know when you're being condescended to, or you just know when somebody's not, and this book just nails all those, the cringy moments, but also fun moments. It's such an easy breezy read that it really belies the real depth here. And this is even like, it's a good book club book. It just thought-provoking. But one of my favorite things about it was actually just like the 2 best friends. I loved how these 2 female friends in this book talk to each other. The dialogue just has such an authenticity of like how real friends talk. Not like, I need these 2 characters in the scene, so now they're gonna talk. No, it was just effortless and real. And I think it's an interesting way of exploring all that stuff that you're seeing on. And oh my gosh, my favorite author, Lily King, had a new book out. I was like personally excited that my favorite author's book was coming out around the same time that mine was, just because I was like, oh my God, this is so magical. But I love Lily King. I fell in love with her with Euphoria, like so many did, and then went back and I was just like, she's incredible. And this is so different from Euphoria. But again, like, I don't know, I feel like maybe with the exception, obviously, of the Kevin Kwan, but like this was a back to realism. If I felt like Euphoria was this dream of another world and another time. But this is so heartfelt and just true. It's about two writers. It's set in Cambridge. So if you just you had fun being a Harvard student, now you can be a Harvard graduate, MFA writer or something. You can go back as a broke writer, which is almost exactly my trajectory. But it's about writing. It's about the process, the struggle, the way that it's always wrapped up in our identity and wrapped up in our loves and loving the wrong and the right people. And it just only convinced me more that me and Lily King would be best friends. We actually did meet. I went to her signing and just fangirled, and we bonded over hair products. And I was like, best day of my life. So yeah, those three are really fun as we wrap up this weird summer that we've had. Books are wonderful.
I did want to catch one thing. There's a Q&A button as well. And there's two things here. Elaine wrote, do you have another book in the works? Which you touched on. Hi to your mom. And she signed Elaine from Macomb, Michigan. And cool. Then Susan Aldaco, would you repeat your saying, failure is not a question mark? Oh, it's an event, that one.
Failure.
My granddaughters would benefit from this. So you can answer that one.
It's failure is an event, not a definition. I think we talk about ourselves like I'm a success or a failure, or, oh, my attempt to do this was, no, it's a thing that happened and it's over, and then you can try again. It goes back to this. Things are not so consequential. You are not defining your whole life, because that really is, that's what kills me so much, even with suicide. This book is about how it's not in your control. That isn't to say that I think suicide when it happens is inevitable. It's just this, what I think it is a mistake. And sadly, it's one that we can't take back. And the mistake is believing that the pain you're in now is going to last forever. That what you're experiencing is a definition and not an event. It doesn't have to, and it can change, and it can get better. And it goes again. It's the worst possible consequence of making that assessment that because of you have some evidence that you can extrapolate far into the future, or you can extrapolate out. And it's just a symptom of illness. I mean, to be clear, I don't think it's not a rational choice in any way. But I think even for us who just have, deal with those depressive episodes, which we all go through, and those times it's so easy to feel like I am going to feel like this forever. If I'm lonely now, I'm going to be lonely forever. That's just not true. We don't know that. You don't know what you don't know. You don't know what's in the future. You don't know what you might not even not know about the past. That's why it's so important to be more compassionate with ourselves. And that's really was my, I don't think the book is a message to say, but I think that's a takeaway that I would love for readers to take. And for any aspiring writers, yes, failure is an event, not a definition. Be blue collar about it, but in share time. And my favorite other for Sarah from that same advisor, give yourself permission to take yourself seriously. Because nobody else, you know what, when you're starting out, that's this weird thing. Again, we're always used to getting permission and validation and, oh, well, if I were qualified for the job, I would get the job and be delegated the responsibility. Writing your first manuscript is not like that. You have to do the whole thing by yourself. The weird thing about this, you can't wait for anybody's validation. You can't wait for the agent to accept your query until you've already done it. So if you don't give yourself that permission, then your time will get eaten up. For a passion project where you're getting no money, believe me, it's so hard to go, no, I can't, pick up the kids that afternoon. No, I can't run that errand. No, I can't, because if you don't take yourself seriously first, it just will never be serious. So support everybody.
So really quick, we're getting some more fun notes. Elaine again from Macomb. I imagine book club party isn't happening this year. Is there going to be one next year featuring you and this book?
Yes. So what she's referencing, for those who might not know, is that my mom and I annually host this giant book-a-palooza called the Book Club Party, where we invite book clubs who have read whatever was the designated book of usually one of our latest, to our home. And it's something that 15 years ago started as, 12 people in my living room that we I baked cookies for. And now it grew into 500 people on a Saturday and another 500 on Sunday for a big giant catered lunch in a tent, everything. This year, Ghosts of Harvard was the book, still is the book. If your book club reads it, not only, you know, you can enter for the book club party. Also, I will Zoom with your book club. But because we love book clubs and you guys are such incredible, just like there's no higher compliment to me than recommending and sharing the book with your friends, and book clubs do that. We love you. Obviously, this year messed us up for October. Typically, it's the first weekend in October. We're not doing that. But we just moved it back. So it is still happening. You can still enter. You can still enter with Reading Ghosts of Harvard. All the entry details are on my website and on my mom's website. Mine is francescaserritella.com. She's scottolini.com. So we're moving it to May. Hopefully this coming May, we can get together outside safely and in a group. We might be making other modifications. I don't know if we'll be able to have as many people. You know, it's still so up in the air, so I don't have all the details, but I do want to say that we are still want to try to find a way to do this, even if it has to be postponed. We don't want to do it virtually. We want to do it outside. So like we always do. So here's hoping, please God, right? Like, I mean, gosh, I hope we're not dealing with this next May.
Yes. Okay. And one last comment from Jean. I am halfway through Ghosts of Harvard and I am blown away. I am enjoying it immensely.
Oh, Jean, thank you so much. That just makes my heart sing. I'm so honored and humbled that this story that lived only in my heart and mind for so long, now people I've never met you're taking this book into your homes and into your heart, and the story and characters into your mind and the voices into your ear. It's just, that to me is the magic trick. You know, I think there are two types of writers and neither is better than the other. Some are like, they write to explore themselves and they're, you know, maybe more introverted. Maybe it doesn't matter anybody who reads it, they'd be happy, it's their calling. For me, honestly, I am the storyteller type. I am that other archetype where the magic is right now. The magic is that you are reading it and that we can talk about it and that you're bringing the story to life in your mind in a way that maybe even I couldn't have found new facets. And that is just so thrilling and exciting to me. And I'm so grateful. So thank you so much.
Yeah. We do, I know everyone just keeps writing. They just love it. Let's see. Thank you so much. Kids today need to hear this. I think that was from in your wonderful comment. And then Eileen Law Stewart, can't wait to read your second book based on what you just told us and some tidbits. She asked, would it be okay for me to do the book I just published called From a Different Chair? I never imagined I'd be an author, but I was led to do it. You wouldn't believe that you won't believe the story's all true. It's designed to give people hope. So maybe we can find a way. I'm not sure how to connect Eileen, but
Eileen,
yes.
Email me.
Okay. All right. We've been given a little gentle tap from our wonderful host, Michael, and we are at 8:03 and this time just flew by. So I just thank you so much, Kathleen.
Oh my gosh, thank you.
Oh, I'm so glad we got to do this, and I'm so glad I stalked you.
I'm so honored and thrilled. And this is one of those silver linings moments of this quarantine, because I don't know if debut authors get sent across the country to California, but this is just so great for me. I'm so excited to be introduced to your community and grateful for this opportunity. So
Thank you.
Thank you.
Well, you know what, Francesca, we're going to keep selling your book all through the holiday season. This is going to be one of our #1 fiction books because it's such an easy
I
sell.
think it can suit your back to school vibes. It can suit a little spooky Halloween. And I can't wait till we can all safely travel again. I would love, love, love to visit your store in person.
Oh, we'd love to have you.
All right.
And thank you for being open to doing this with us. We've really enjoyed having you.
Oh, it's my pleasure.
Yeah. All right. Good night, everybody, and thank everyone for participating and joining us. All right.